Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from ejsllc.com, and this is going to be another video in my series of RHCSA exam practice videos where I'm going to talk about some of the objectives to see if I feel like I know what I'm doing, so hopefully I'll do well on the exam. Remember, these aren't necessarily designed to be authoritative information, but I do try to make the information accurate. It's more of an opportunity for me to do a little self-assessment. Before I dive in, I want to remind you, if you enjoy the content of this video, make sure you click like. Also, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. So this video, I'm going to do 4 objectives in one video, and it's the Manage Basic Networking part of the RHCSA. And I'm doing all 4 in this mainly because I don't think each one necessarily needs its own video, especially the objective about making services automatically boot, because that was covered on another objective as well. So the objectives we're going to look at are configure IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, configure hostname resolution, configure network devices to start automatically at boot, and restrict network access using firewall-cmd/firewall, which I think that /firewall should be /firewall-d. So diving into the first, from what I have gathered, the goal in RHCSA is to get whatever needs to be configured. The method with which you do that does not really matter. Now, I would argue there are some methods that are better than others, and better being either they're quicker or there's less prone to error, something like that. So for the first objective, configure IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, there's really 3 ways to do it. You can either use nmtui, which in a non-testing situation I probably would use just because I'm trying to become more familiar with that particular interface. But in a testing situation I might not use that just because the command can be a bit cryptic, and I haven't used it enough to where I just have everything memorized. Another option is a GUI-like option, but it's actually a text-based UI, and that's nmtui, which is what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. And then the last is the GUI option, which if you were to go into, if you have a GUI environment like this, and on CentOS, I'll go into the settings, and there should be, let's see, where would this be? Let's go back from devices, network. You would configure all of your stuff here within network, but I'm probably going to be using nmtui just because even that to me is a little faster than clicking through the GUI. So this server is set to use DHCP, and so configuring the IP address is only going to happen in a static environment. And it has IPv4 and IPv6. I doubt that I'll have to configure IPv6, but if I do, it shouldn't be too difficult. The main difference between the two being your IPv4 address is 32 bits and will have 4 octets of numbers between 0 and 255 depending on your network. And then your IPv6 addresses are, I believe, 128 bits from right off the top of my head. And you have 4 sets of hexadecimal characters, which would be 0 through 9 and A through F. And I believe there are 8 sets of those from right off the top of my head. I'd have to do the math in my head to count the number of bits that you would have there. So I'm going to go ahead and launch nmtui, and as you imagine, this is a text user interface, and by default on CentOS your connection is not going to be active, and I believe this is probably going to be the true for RHEL as well. Now, when I did my install, I went ahead and activated the interface there, but let's say that this was just blanket, no patching, nothing done, keep all the defaults there in the installer. What I would want to do is activate whatever connection I have, and the ENP1S0 is the one that I have active. So to edit it, edit connection, and we have ENP1S0, and here everything is automatic right now. And you can look at the settings. If you do show, you can change MAC address, or actually I guess clone the MAC address. I really haven't used that much. You can do show here and then set your static IP addresses. You can tell the interface to either always use static IP addresses or disable just the IPv4 part of it. You can also set, I'm going to press escape here. You can set DNS servers, and you can still have a static DNS server as well as a DHCP based IP address. You can also add search domains, and the idea behind those is you would, let's say that you try to ping foo. Well, if you have a search domain configured, then let's say that domain is blah.com. Well, if you just type foo, it's going to try to resolve foo.blah.com. Do remove, and there we go. There are some other settings that you can set here. Also can do some routing, and you have that for IPv6 as well. You can do OK, and then I'm going to back out of that. So if I were to, and I'm not going to set a static address just because I'm going to keep my DHCP, but I wanted to show you the utility that you would use for that. Also, you can do nmcli, and often I would imagine in the testing environment I would use this con show to see if our connections are up or not. And anything you do with nmtui you can do with nmcli and more. But you know, in the pressure situation of a test, I think GUIs might be, or at least for me, are probably going to be the better way to go. Not that I'm afraid of nmcli. I actually kind of like it the more I've started to dig into it, but I myself am just not confident enough that for the time it will take for me to get my commands accurate with nmcli, that nmtui is going to be a bit faster for me. So that gets to the next topic, the configuring hostname resolution. And that involves your etcresolve.conf. So let me cat that. And notice it says generated by Network Manager, and there's a name server there. Network Manager is the service that nmcli is interfacing with, hence Network Manager CLI, or Network Manager Text User Interface. If you were to make a change to resolve.conf, like literally change the file and add another name server that you would use, which is your DNS server, and then you reboot your machine, that change will go away, or at least to the best of my knowledge it will. And remember, everything in RHCSA has to survive a reboot. So if you wanted to configure that hostname resolution, there are a couple things that you can do. If you want to add the DNS server, that I will go ahead and do with nmtui. So let's go into my IPv4 configuration, and we're going to add the Google DNS server 8.8.8.8 if I can type. There we go. We do OK. Back. And quit. All right, so cat etc resolve.conf, and nothing has changed. That's kind of odd. All right, so let's look at nmcli con show and see if it will autocomplete that. All right, so let me, that's going to give us a ton of information about this. Let me grep DNS. All right, well, we have IPv4 DNS that's been set to 8.8.8.8, yet the resolve.conf isn't there. All right, well, let's take a look at this. Let's go to, I'm actually going to sudo into root here. If I don't fat finger my, oh, come on, 2 in a row. There we go. We're going to go into etc sysconfig network scripts. Now, all of this with nmcli and nmtui, really every connection you have is going to have a script. And what the nmcli and nmtui network manager is doing is really managing this script for you. Any change you make, you can also make in this particular script. So if I were to cat this ifconfig, we see there's our DNS server that we set, but it still hasn't changed resolve.conf. Well, if you remember, it said it's generated by Network Manager. So to make this change for that resolve.conf, what we're going to need to do is restart the network manager. Now the configuration is already in the network script, so it's going to persist. But if you wanted to make the change also happen with resolve.conf, we will systemctl restart network manager, and now we'll cat etc resolve.conf, and there's our second name server. Now notice it says the second one. I can't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly which name server it's going to use first. I would imagine it's going to use, actually no, I should know the answer to this. It's going to use that first name server that's there, and then you have that as a secondary, even though that's labeled as DNS1. I'm fairly sure that's how that's going to work. Those of you that are masters of Linux networking, by all means comment and tell me if I'm wrong, and if I am, do tell me. So that way I get it right, and other folks that are watching the video will get that right. Another thing I want to point out is the host file. So we're going to cat etc hosts. And this is local name resolution. So rather than having to make a query to your DNS servers, your system will look at your host file and see if there is an entry for foo.com, right? And if I want to edit this, I can just vi etc hosts, and let's just make up an IP address here. Let's do 1.2.3.4 and foo.com. So if I were to try to ping foo.com, notice how that resolves to 1.2.3.4. The reason being is your system is going to check the host file to see if it can resolve something, and then if it can't resolve it from the host file, it'll go to the name servers. So the question becomes, what if on the exam I need to configure my system to where it checks DNS before it checks hosts? Not sure why you would do that, but just, you know, they have the objective configure hostname resolution. That's something that can be configured. So let's go back to etc, clear the screen, and what we're looking for is the nsswitch.conf file. So I'm going to go ahead and vi nsswitch, no, nsswitch, sorry, .conf. There are several things with this, but the one for DNS that we're looking for is hosts. And what this says for hosts is you're going to look at files first. That would be our etc host file. Then we're going to look at DNS, and right off the top of my head, I can't remember what the my host name means for that. I probably should, but you know, I'm trying to do these kind of as live as I can, and if today was the exam day and it was like, all right, what's my host name? I'm not 100% sure, other than like obviously, hey, it's your actual host name. I'm not sure really what that represents, but this is where you would configure if I wanted to have it check DNS first, then I would swap the order of DNS and files. Let's quit out of that. All right, so we have configure network services to start automatically at boot. I've done that with other objectives, but let's say that we wanted to start the HTTPD service. And actually, as a matter of fact, let me grab the IP address of another one of my VMs. This isn't going to be on screen. I'm only sharing the one KVM thing. And its IP address is 116. All right, so we're going to SSH it hasn't seen that before, and I should do a little counter of the number of times I fat finger my password on these lab servers. So I'm in CentOS Practice 1 versus CentOS Practice 1-GUI, and let's sudo into root. I'm going to install Apache. That should take just a moment or so. And to satisfy this objective, we need to configure a network service to start automatically at boot. Working with systemd and systemctl, this means we need to enable a service. So we'll go ahead and enable HTTPD, technically HTTPD.service, I'm going to do -- now. So that way we both enable it and we start the service. All right, so we have HTTPD going, and the last thing in this objective is restrict network access using firewall-cmd and firewall, which is really firewall-d and firewall-command. There's a lot you can do with firewall-d, and really what firewall-d is I believe it's NF tables. What the underlying firewall mechanism is for RHEL and CentOS now, or is it NF filter? Need to look that up. I mean, I know there is something underneath this. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe it's called net filter. Ah, that's going to bother me now. In the comments, put it there, because I'm sure there will be someone else watching the video that is, you know, it's on the tip of their tongue as well. Anyway, what firewall-d is, it's an interface to the firewalling mechanism. And so to work with the interface, we use firewall-cmd. So I'm here, and if I were to do firewall-cmd -- get active zone, firewall-d works with zones, and the built-in zones have certain parameters to them. So let's do firewall-cmd. I think I can do, and you can have some tab completion with this. List all zone. Public is our active zone right now. Maybe this will do what I want. Yeah. So with the public zone, it's currently our default zone. The interface that's bound to it is the interface for this server, and we are currently allowing these services. So from a network restriction perspective, if I wanted to prevent any SSH connections from coming in, which obviously I don't right now because I have SSH running, what I would do would be firewall command -- remove service. I think it's remove service. Maybe not. Is my tab completion failing me? I thought it was remove service. When in doubt, check the man page. Firewall-cmd - remove. Yeah, -- remove service. Odd. Anyway, thought I had tab completion for that. But I will do firewall-cmd -- remove -service equal SSH. Now I'm going to do -- permanent. And the reason why I'm going to do that is that's not going to affect this immediately, right? You have two different runtimes with firewall-d. You have the actual current running runtime, and then you have the permanent saved state. So just like everything with RHCSA, we have to do stuff to where it will persist. If I do -- permanent, then it's going to remove this service from the current default zone, which happens to be the public zone. You can do firewall-cmd get default, I believe. It's get default or get default zone. Yep, just get default, and that's public. So if I were to take a look, list all zone public permanent, then we see that SSH is now gone. Now you don't have to reboot your system to be able to test permanent. You can use the firewall-cmd -- reload, and it will do that. And I'm curious to see if this will break my SSH connection. I'm still on. So firewall-cmd -- reload. Let's look at list is not going to give me what I want. Let's do list services. All right, so we're currently don't have the services allowed on this. I wonder if it's because I currently have a connection. Well, we can put this to the test. All right, so I've ended the SSH session. Let's see if I can reconnect. and it is not allowing me to connect. Another thing that you can do, and actually I have obviously firewall-d on this. Let me list zones. Is that not what I want? It's going to give me all the configuration for that. Maybe it's get zones. There we go. So these are all the different zones, and each of these have their own own configuration. So one configuration I could potentially see is, let's say that the current zone of an interface is home. Right now it's public. If I wanted to change that, let's say for my VM here, if I wanted to change this from the public zone to the home zone, I can do firewall-cmd -- change interface and give it the interface name, which is that -- zone, and we're going to change this to home. All right, so let's do firewall-cmd get zone. Of course, I want to get active zone, and that's showing that it is home. Now let's look at get default zone. All right, that's still showing as public. When I'm curious, since I didn't do permanent, if I were to reload the firewall, I wonder what zone I'll be in. All right, and let's get the active zone. I'm changed back to public, which makes sense. Now, in your own studies for RHCSA, at this point, I'm kind of done with, quote, just going through the objectives. But I found something that helps me with the studying is doing little scenarios like this. All right, let me change the zone. All right, let's reload. What's going to happen? And start making some educated guesses about what should happen. I figured it would change back to the default zone, and it did. But doing that with just various things, preparing for the exam, has helped me, because it starts making like more connections in my head, and I start thinking through stuff, and quite frankly, you learn more. But I believe this hits everything for the Managed Basic Networking objectives. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you click like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell when you do. Don't hesitate to leave comments, ask questions if you want. I'll try to answer as accurately as I can, or if I get some stuff wrong, and certainly I think there are a couple of things in this video that I did, feel free to leave a comment about that, so A, I get better information, and B, anyone else that's watching the video will see the accurate information as well. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.